Well, good afternoon. Had to check my watch. Been kind of piddling and not doing a whole lot today. Checking the senderos and stuff like that. Want to talk about FOC. For people that don't know what that means, there's a bunch of people out there that does know what it means, but some people may not know is forward of center or whatever. And basically, what it is the percentage of weight distributed towards the front that moves the pivot point of the arrow closer to the front. In other words, you take this arrow right here, and I don't have the whole arrow in there, but anyway, in the center would be 0% FOC. The closer to the front, where the arrow balances, is the higher percentage of FOC. Okay. The idea behind FOC is for better penetration, sometimes better arrow flight. There's a lot of different reasons. There's a lot. Dr. Ashby, I've mentioned him in some of my other videos before, has done extensive, probably the most extensive study on FOC in Africa on big game animals and things like that, as far as penetration and things like that. Very, very extensive data work done on it with real animals, real arrows, with traditional equipment, and I'm certain it would work for just any type bow to a certain extent. But more and more, I hear people talking about, well, I want to get more FOC or whatever, and some of these people are experienced building their own arrows. Some of them have people build their arrows for them, or they like a certain broadhead or whatever. Not telling anybody what kind of broadheads to use or anything like that. You use whatever you want. I can just tell you what, from my experience, it's not scientific data or anything else. From my experience of killing lots and lots of animals over decades of time, I can tell you what works for me, and you make up your own mind about what you want to do. If that doesn't fit your style or whatever, then do whatever you want. Now, as far as FOC goes, is it important? Yes, I 100% believe in forward of center weighting. I certainly would not want something that was heavier in the tail than it is in the head. That doesn't even seem right. Now, the extreme FOC, where you're above 30% FOC, extremely heavy point and all that stuff. Is it necessary? I don't know. I would argue, Paco, come here. Paco, come here. I would argue that a heavier arrow, or mass weight arrow that's heavier than an arrow the exact same length, probably would penetrate better than a lighter arrow. Okay. Now, I will say, with pretty good, with a lot of certainty, that FOC and the concept of that is not a new thing. Okay, it didn't just come out. Somebody didn't just discover it, or whatever. People have been doing that forever. It just hadn't been advertised and talked about in depth, as much until recent years. I mean, recent decade, maybe, something like that. But it's really caught on, and people are trying to achieve these FOC things. One thing I will tell you, that is just set in stone, hard fact. Whether or not you're running a very high FOC wood arrow, or any kind of an arrow, I don't care if you have 30% FOC or not. If the arrow is not spined properly and it's not flying as good as it can be, I don't care what kind of FOC you got, your penetration is going to be affected. Just a fact. Arrows that hit the target at an angle, sideways or whatever, are not going to penetrate like you want them to. You have to have whatever amount of FOC you're using, you have to have good arrow flight. That's the number one goal. If you have a 725 grain arrow that has extreme FOC, meaning 30% FOC, and then you have another arrow that's 750 grains or whatever it was I just said, and it's a parallel shaft and it's, 15% FOC, the latter will penetrate more if the first one's not flying like it should. So a lot of people are talking about FOC, but they're skipping over the part where you have to have good arrow flight. FOC will cover up some arrow flight a little bit. Bigger feathers will cover up, or vanes, or whatever it is you shoot, will cover up some of this bad arrow flight. But I can almost, again, my rule, I don't work in absolutes. I don't say, well, absolutely do this every time, or absolutely won't do this every time. I don't work like that. There's too many things that can happen. I will tell you, in my experience, that a hunting weight arrow and bow combination, depending on what draw weight you have and what your draw length is and the type of material you're using, as long as you're getting good arrow flight, or the best arrow flight that bow and you can produce, yes, FOC will benefit you no matter what game you're hunting, whether it's deer or hogs or elk or moose or whatever it is you're hunting. That will definitely help you. If you have the wrong combination and you are shooting something that is way underspined or way overspined and your arrow flight is bad, not so much. You have to get good arrow flight for this concept to work. I'm not going to recommend to you that you need 22% FOC for perfect arrow flight and penetration on deer-sized animals. I'm not going to say that. There's too many things that can happen out in the field. You're shooting high winds or raining or sunshine, whatever. There's too much stuff going on. I'm not going to tell you that one way or the other. I personally like, and there is some benefit. Howard Hill was a big fan of tapered shafts. Why not listen to the man? I like them, but I also have hundreds of parallel shafts that are not tapered. They shoot just as good. Does it affect FOC? A little bit, maybe a point or two percentage, maybe something like that. You're not removing that much wood where it would move it extremely forward. That's just a flight characteristic of that arrow. But again, this is not a new concept. I mean, when I was younger, a lot younger, you didn't have as many choices. I mean, you had, of course, you had Bear broadheads and Zwickeys and Ace and Botnick or whatever, that 3-blade broadhead that you could never get sharp. There's all different kinds. There wasn't near as many broadheads back then as there is now. So you didn't have a lot of choices in grain weights and whatever else. Generally, you bought what was on the store shelf at the Lax hardware store that you went to that actually sold sporting goods or whatever that you could get your hands on. So what we used to do, and I probably still would do it now that I know more about, because we didn't have any way to weigh arrows. We didn't grain weigh them and everything. We didn't have that. But what I used to do, and I've seen done, people been drilling holes in the end of shafts and stuffing nails and screws and lead and whatever else they can get in there to add weight to the front of the arrow. That's not new. That's been around a long, long time. Generally, what we was trying to do was figure out a way to make them arrows fly better out of the bow. Because again, the selection for some of us, and there's some people that live next door to Rose City Archery for 50 years, and back 50 years ago they could get whatever shafts they wanted. Not everybody's like that. As far as I know, there was not an arrow manufacturer in Texas. There might have been one, but it was small scale, and there certainly was not the internet where you could pick and choose what you wanted. So What we were attempting to do was to help arrow flight by putting weight in the front of the arrow. You know, I didn't think of that. Somebody else did, but I used to do it. You take and drill a 1/8 inch hole in the end of a cedar shaft, about an inch or inch and a half long, or however long you can stick a 16 penny nail, cut it off with a pair of wire cutters, and then taper that shaft and glue a point on it. How much did it gain in weight up front? I don't know. 50 grains, 70 grains, 20 grains. We don't know. You know, we never kept any records of that. We didn't have any way to weigh it. So, again, yes, FOC is important. Is it worth headaches and headaches and headaches trying to go through hundreds of arrows trying to get the perfect 27% FOC or whatever with your setup? I don't think so. It's just my personal opinion. I don't think it's worth that. I think if you have a hunting weight arrow with some percentage of FOC that flies good out of your setup, whatever it is, you're much better off with that versus chasing something and spending a lot of time and money on something that, with wood arrows anyway. Now, carbon arrows and aluminum arrows and stuff like that, you can achieve that pretty easily. You can buy kits and, you know, weights and everything else. Then you can adjust that 5 grains one way or the other, and you can dial that son of a gun in where it's just, you know, exactly where you want it at. Wood arrows, not so much. So anyway, FOC, yes, it's a good thing. Is chasing a certain number of percentage wise of FOC with wood arrows, you probably would be better off spending your time trying to get the arrow span right where it's flying straight out of your bow, and not somebody else's data chasing that around. And you might be not wasting your time, because it's all a learning experience, but time better spent would be getting your bow set up where, whether it's 150 or 125 grain or 100 or 175 or 190 grain, something like that on the front, and that bad boy is razor sharp, and it's a hunting weight arrow. You'd be better off spending your time making sure those basics are covered in your process. So again, just trying to help with the eliminating variables. This certainly is a topic that is a hot topic amongst a lot of people, but people that have been doing it for a long time and been hunting for decades with wood arrows and longbows and recurves, I think that probably a large percentage of them would agree with what I'm saying. You need a good sharp broadhead, you need a hunting weight arrow, and you need one that flies good out of your bow. Those are the 3 things that you really need to focus on before you start chasing these data points, really and truly, because you can, spend a lot of time when you should be out hunting. So anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on FOC. I do know a lot of ways to add FOC to your arrows. If you have any questions about any of these things, please leave comments down below, and you guys enjoy your bows and have a good day.